Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you all once again. Now, what does it mean to pursue health not as a trend, but as a lifelong act of curiosity, discipline, and discipline, freedom, and responsibility? Today's guest is Arnon Krongrad, a surgeon, scientist, athlete, educator, entrepreneur, musician, and founder of is community. For nearly 60 years, Dr. Krongrad has explored medicine, biology, nutrition, performance, resilience, and human health from almost every angle imaginable. He has delivered babies in remote Africa, treated trauma patients in inner cities, co-authored pioneering cancer prevention research, introduced laparoscopic prostate surgery to the US, studied molecular biology, and spent decades thinking deeply about how humans actually thrive physically and mentally. But beyond medicine, he's also an endurance athlete, former competitive swimmer, cook, martial artist, student of circadian biology, lover of anthropology and agriculture, and someone endlessly fascinated by how humans adapt, survive, and perform. What began as a small WhatsApp conversation between goat meat moussaka eventually evolved into ease, a global community centered around nutrition, exercise, freedom, resilience, critical thinking, and human optimization beyond mainstream narratives. Today, we explore medicine, health, culture, nutrition, aging, movement, resilience, circadian biology, performance, freedom, masculinity, modern health myths, and what it really takes to live well for a very long time. Dr. Krongrad, welcome to Thought Atlas. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Blessed. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So, Dr. Krongrad, before we kick things off, can you tell us more about yourself?
I think you covered it. I don't think you left out anything. I mean, you read my
Okay.
entire bio, so but I think
Okay.
I think you nailed the theme running through all the different adventures that life brings us. In my case, and in many people's case, it's the theme is one of curiosity. I want to know what there is out there. I want to live. I want to experience. I want to think. I want to meet people. So curious about the world around me.
Same here, Dr. Krongrad. Same here. And I really, relish this opportunity to be able to speak with people from all over the world, from different parts of the world. And of course, not just people alone, but experienced people who are experts rather in their field. And it's a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And also, once again, welcome. So my first question for you today is: you joined your first house call at 6 years old. What impact did that experience have on you? And sorry, before you answer, I don't even know what a house call is. So if you don't mind, describing that for I and the listeners.
So for the entirety of the history of doctoring, of medical care, um, doctors have gone to where the patients are. In May, the idea of going to where the patient is symbolized in what I call a house call, which means that the doctor is summoned, picks up his doctor bag or whichever tools, if any, and goes to the house where the patient lives. It's that simple. Um, it's not a new phenomenon. It's ancient. And so, tell me, what would you like to know about that house call?
Okay, so I want to know what the impacts that the house call had on you, given that you were quite young at 6 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that particular day is one of my earliest life memories. It's probably not the earliest because I was six by that point, but it had an impact. Let me describe it. Let me describe the setting for you so you understand a little bit about my childhood and what an event like that might have meant. I was living, this is in the 1960s, I was living in Jerusalem, in Israel. Jerusalem back then was a small city. I mean, the entire country only had 3 million people in it, and Jerusalem was not its biggest city. So you can imagine this was not a very big city.
Yeah.
relatively sleepy. We were not wealthy. There was not a lot of material goods. Um, and on that particular day was a Saturday. It was the Sabbath. And Jerusalem being populated principally by Jews, the Sabbath was a relatively quiet day, meaning the stores weren't open, people were not running around the streets. So a small town, hilly town, um, and very quiet on that particular morning. What happened is the telephone rang, which was very, very unusual. People didn't call very often in general. And in fact, that telephone was new. We didn't have a telephone until I think probably just a few weeks before that particular day. I mean, phones were just coming into Israel back in that period. So very dramatic, right? It's a Saturday morning. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be very, very sleepy, very quiet, and the telephone rings. So my father answered it, had a short conversation with somebody on the other end. He turned to me and said, "Get in the car." Now I could tell that he was serious. He meant get in the car. Don't start asking questions. Don't argue. Just pick up your stuff, get in the car. And I did. And off we went. I didn't know where we were going. All I knew was I was going somewhere with my father on a Saturday morning, which in and of itself was incredibly unusual. So we drove. The streets were quiet. There was nothing there. People were not running around. And we arrived at a small house. At the front door, there were two men with Uzi, the guns. We were ushered in. My father was taking to one direction, and I was asked to wait in a room off to the side. Now that room also was unusual, had things in it that I had never seen before. What I remember is two elephant tusks. One stood upright. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was an upright elephant tusk, just plain standing up. And there was another one positioned horizontally that had been carved up. And I was absolutely fascinated. I didn't know what I was doing there. It was a Saturday morning, and here I am in a room with elephant tusks with men with guns outside waiting for my father to come back. That
Wow.
particular trip was a house call, and that house belonged to the president. And the president was having chest pain. Israeli presidents have chest pain from time to time, as you might imagine. And so there I was. I was on a house call to see the president because he was having chest pain. Now I didn't go and see the president. I didn't examine him, but the impact, which is what you asked about, was simple. Here is a doctor, okay, my father in this case. Here's a doctor, and he was being called to help a man in trouble. In order for him to help that man in trouble, what he had to do was get up, get out of bed, and go somewhere and do something. So the lesson there is medicine, doctoring is a service profession. It earns its value from serving other people. Now, that lesson has repeated itself. It's not the only time I've seen that. The other really impactful um, example of serving, of doctoring at its finest, in my opinion, I spent time working at a clinic in a place called Rosinga Island, which is in Lake Victoria in Kenya. It was a small clinic, very remote. You couldn't drive to it, you had to walk to it. We didn't have electricity. There was no insurance companies, there were no deductibles, there was no third parties. It was just the patient and me. But same stories when I was 6 years old on the house call. It was about getting up, it was about going somewhere, it's about doing something to help somebody in trouble. So that was the impact of that house call.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that very beautiful story. And when you mentioned guns, like men with guns standing outside, I was like, oh my, is he some kind of terrorist or what? But when you said it was the president, yeah, your dad went to, visit and take care
It
of him. I was
was
like, oh, wow.
it was just his security, but for me, it was a very unusual, a very unusual event.
Yeah, it was security detail.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that story, Conrad. So, now, what has nearly 60 years around patients taught you about human beings, beyond medicine itself?
Oh, I don't know that this lesson was taught to me only at the bedside. I observe people away from the bedside too. But if I'm to focus on the bedside, um, people, people are just people. I mean, imagine in my case, I spent years doing prostate cancer surgery. And in order
Yes.
to do prostate cancer surgery, in the lead in, you examine the prostate. It's part of the story. A patient comes to you, he's
Yeah.
got a X, Y, and Z. I examine the prostate. Well, to examine the prostate means having the patient drop his pants and bend over. Okay. There's no particular dignity in doing something like that. It's a rather uncomfortable exam for most people. And
Yes.
it's not the sort of thing you would ever see on a public stage. It's a private event. But in that position, in doing all those exams, what you understand is every man is the same as the other. I mean, one may be more famous, one may have more money, but ultimately we're just men and women trying to survive, trying not to be sick and trying to thrive. I guess the lesson there is we're all pretty much the same. We all have fears, we all have hopes. We're not that different from each other.
Oh wow, that's absolutely profound. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Krongrad. Now, Dr. Krongrad, I'm quite curious. You've been in the space of medicine and health for a very long time, longer than I have been alive. So, how has the culture of medicine changed over your lifetime?
It's unfortunately changed profoundly and in the wrong direction. My simple view is that medicine is about the patient. That's all it's about. It's not about the doctor. It's certainly not about anybody else. It's about the patient. If you accept that, then what you must also accept, and if you also accept that the doctor is the principal navigator of the medical care for the patient, then you must reject any interference in that physician patient relationship, which I think is absolutely precious and critical. In the years since that house call, we have seen increasingly the corrosion of that relationship. We've seen the introduction of all kinds of third parties. I'm speaking principally from the experience I have in the United States. In the United States, core measures, guidelines, electronic medical records, insurance companies, the people who provide those services, like insurance services, they're not there to take care of the patient. They may call themselves healthcare companies, and they do, but they're in essence banks. Some of them are for profit. They're there to make a profit. Okay, so by its nature, the introduction of those parties is an interference in the supremely important physician-patient relationship. I mean, think about it. When I was in Kenya, one of the things I did was I set up a nutrition clinic for kids, for babies, and for children who were suffering mainly from protein deficiencies, protein malnutrition. It was stupid because we were living on a lake rich with fish, but the moms just didn't have the knowledge that they needed to give the kids those fish so that they wouldn't suffer from protein malnutrition. I didn't have a third party there. There was no insurance company. There was no electronic record. I just took care of the baby. I mean, it really should not be any more complicated than that. So in the 60 years, I've seen the corruption of medical care, and the people who pay most for it are the patients. I think the doctors pay a lot for it also. I think doctors are absolutely exhausted by having to battle against these third parties, but the patients clearly are suffering because of it.
Oh my, thank you so much for that very enlightening response, Dr. Krongrad. Now, Dr. Krongrad, do you see any organization or group of doctors, or let's say some kind of society coming up to fight against this new development?
Well, I wouldn't call it a new development. It's been going on for decades at this point. And are there groups? Yeah, I'm not involved in them. The whole idea behind is quite different from fixing society's ills. That we're not an activist group. We're not a political group.
Oh, okay, Dr. Krongrad, thank you so much for that. Now, Dr. Krongrad, what originally drew you into studying nutrition so deeply? was it the experience in Kenya or something else entirely?
Uh, no, I don't think I was terribly interested in nutrition in Kenya. I ran a nutrition clinic, but it was a very simple nutrition clinic. It was basically kids coming in who didn't get enough protein. But I didn't really think too much about nutrition at the time. My interest in nutrition is a personal one, and in fact, it's the interest that eventually led to the formation of ES. I was reading a book. It's called The Big Fat Surprise by a woman named Nina Tischholz. A relatively fat book, well researched, lots of references in it. I was fascinated because that book opened my eyes to a world of history and politics and corruption that I was not aware of involving the food industry in the United States. So, for example, the war on meat and milk, which I trace to the 1940s, more or less, in the US, just lots of stories. And I thought it was really interesting. And the stories were interesting, but what it did from a personal point of view is it changed my views about the food that I'm eating. And I think that's where my interest really began. It broadened from there, but that's where it started.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Krongrad. Dr. Krongrad, what do you think from your experience and everything you learned when you dive deep into the world of nutrition? Why do you think modern people are so confused about food?
Oh, that's easy. They're confused about food because they're given information that's meant to confuse them. So consider, for example, let's go back to the war on meat and milk in the 1960s, 70s, somewhere in there. A couple of guys at Harvard's Hexteth and Stair wrote an article for the New England Journal of Medicine, which is a really prominent, influential medical journal, vilifying the consumption of meat. What they did not disclose is that they were paid to write that article by the sugar industry. So one reason everybody's confused is because the sugar industry dumped a lot of money into the kind of public relations that vilified the competition. I'm talking about meat, for example, with
Yes.
the objective of increasing the sales of their products like sugar, cereal, and so on.
Oh, wow. Isn't that diabolical? That's basically wickedness. Is that legal? Wasn't there any backlash from the public? Were they not sued or maybe even boycotted, if that's the correct way to say that?
Well, every man and woman can judge for himself if writing an article in the New England Journal of Medicine vilifying meat without the data to back it up and taking money from the sugar industry without disclosing that financial intake is diabolical. Okay, that is not for me to say. You can judge that for yourself. Is it illegal? I don't think it was, but in any case, it wasn't disclosed. It was discovered years later that this is what they were doing, publicly discovered. Right now, is there a backlash? Look, there's a lot of this stuff still going on. I mean, none of this is over. We're all dealing with it constantly. I mean, if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, it's not all above board. Our regulatory agencies are captured by the pharmaceutical industries, which is exactly why ES matters to me and to its members. It matters because we are not here to save the Titanic. We are not here. We don't have the resources, and we're not trying to save the Titanic. We're not trying to fix the government. We're not trying to fix the Food and Drug Administration. We're not here to fix Harvard. We're not here for that. All we want is to build a lifeboat. Okay, so we want to know, given the circumstances, given the conflicts of interest, given the incompetence, given the corruption, all we want is to navigate. We want to navigate the icebergs. Do you understand? Do you understand the metaphor?
Yes.
Okay.
So you were about to say something. Please continue, Dr. Conrad.
No, I was just asking if you understand. I mean, we're not. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world. Okay, it's not just in medicine. It's not just in food, but absolutely in this realm that we're interested in, there are a lot of bad things going on. But
Yes.
we're not here to fix them. We're here to survive them.
Yes. Dr. Conrad, honestly, I do understand the point you make. And if I could even elaborate it back to you, Now, it's kind of like think about, no, I don't know if you're religious or not, but think about Noah and the ark. Now, Noah could have easily decided to, fight against God and tell him not to flood the planets if it was a planet that even got flooded. But what did he do instead? He built a lifeboat and was like, you think, or you think the world is going to get flooded eventually, you can come aboard the light and the lifeboat. But if you feel like, well, I'm bullshit and none of that is going to happen, you can continue living on the planet. And to think of it,
Mhm.
which is more feasible? Trying to fight against a system that has been around way before you were born, a system that is way more powerful, way more broader, even bigger than you can fathom, or try to create some kind of lifeboat outside the system where people can escape to and be okay. And the system itself would not be interested in destroying that lifeboat because it does not see it as a threat because the lifeboat itself is not a threat. So I think it's actually logical, more efficient, and more feasible to build a lifeboat just as you described, where people can come and seek alternative health um, methods as opposed to, going through the system that could possibly destroy them. I don't know if I articulated it very well, but that's how I understand the point you're trying to make.
I think Noah and the ark is a perfectly good metaphor here. There's a flood coming. In our case, the flood is already here. Okay. And so accidentally, I wound up started to build an ark. And then some of my friends found out about it and they asked if they could come on the ark. And so I expanded it and we're expanding it more. I think a lot more people can join us now.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Krongrad. Now, Dr. Krongrad, you often explore ancestral diets and evolutionary biology. What can modern humans learn from older ways of eating?
We can, well, I mean, the essential task, whether it's food or fitness or sleep, is to align our behavior with our innate optimal biology. The question we're solving for is what is our innate biology? How much exercise are we meant to get? Is man a bodybuilder or is man an endurance athlete? Okay, we have both. If you look around, it doesn't look like man is an endurance athlete. Right? Most people can't run very far,
Yeah.
at least where I live. Um,
Mhm.
right. So if you don't understand what we're designed for and you try to fight against it, let's say we're designed actually by evolution to be endurance athletes, but we instead train to be bodybuilders. Is that good for us, for our function? Right. So let's come back to nutrition. We have a lot of confusion about nutrition these days. I mean, there are some people who believe that veganism is a smart nutritional strategy. So, what does evolution show? That's where I think looking into history is incredibly important. And it's important. It's important not to get confused. It's important not to come to simple sorts of points of reference. For example, I like to ask the following question: in which species is the stomach pH closest to that of the human? Okay, zebra, colobus monkey, leopard, or vulture? Now, a lot of people say,
Oh,
"Oh, what? Do you know the answer?"
I want to try. I want to try.
Okay,
It cannot be the vulture because the vulture eats carcasses, so definitely not. The zebra, on the other hand, is a herbivore, so probably not. Sorry, can I get the other two options?
zebra, vulture, colobus monkey, and leopard.
Definitely the colobus monkey. I've never seen that species before, but I think it has to be that one.
Okay, so the answer. You want me to tell you the answer?
Yes.
Okay, so the animal whose stomach pH is closest to that of the human is the vulture.
What? Oh,
Yep,
wow.
it's very, very acidic. So is the stomach pH of the human. Very, very acidic. Now, the colobus monkey cannot possibly be um, the right answer because it is like the zebra, it's a herbivore, and man is not. Okay. The leopard is not far away. Okay. The leopard's a pure carnivore, obviously. But the vulture, first of all, the vulture is also a pure carnivore. You don't see a vulture eating bananas. Okay.
Yeah.
right? And the vulture eats rotted flesh. Okay, the probable reason that man and the vulture, well, the vulture has highly acidic stomach pH to allow it to consume rotting flesh without becoming sick. Rotting flesh has bacteria and maggots and all kinds of stuff in it that could potentially kill you
Yes.
if you're not well protected. And this strong stomach acid protects you. Man has the same stomach acid, implying that man also evolved as a scavenger, at least at some point. Now, there's overwhelming evidence that man evolved as a carnivore through a lot of his history. Okay, that doesn't mean he didn't periodically eat plants, particularly later on, and certainly today we eat a lot of plants. But in our evolution, strong evidence that man hunted meat and also hunted fat. So man preferred to eat brain and bone marrow when he had the opportunity. So back to man, the scavenger, and back to the question of, is man a bodybuilder or endurance runner? Okay, there is really strong evidence from paleontology, anthropology, and even modern sociology that man is an endurance athlete. Okay, outside of the urban environment, um, in the pre-industrial world, certainly man can run very long distances. Man has beaten horses in endurance events. There are examples of societies. I'm thinking principally in the Americas and Mexico, where the people run, 90 miles at a time. So
Wow.
if you consider, going back to our optimal biology, if you consider the vulture and man as the scavengers, it makes a lot of sense because both factors make a lot of sense: the strong stomach pH and the endurance athleticism. Because imagine that man, I don't know, 100,000 years ago, many years ago, um, yeah, he was able to run very long distances and consume rotting flesh. He would have survived reasonably well on carcasses. He would have beaten the hyenas. I don't think hyenas can run as far as man can, for example. So that's what I'm talking about. You can draw interesting and potentially really impactful lessons by looking at science from before today, before the modern era, and
Wow.
and
Thank you so much.
and looking,
Okay.
sorry, and looking more broadly. Okay, so it's great to look deep into the past, including paleontology, but looking broadly, looking at inferences and going beyond, being curious way beyond just the superficial, right? So man anatomically doesn't look like a vulture. Man looks, if anything, like a chimpanzee in terms of animals that
Yes.
kind of resemble us, but physiologically, we're nothing like the chimp. Not when it comes to stomach pH.
Wow. Thank you so much for that very enlightening response, Dr. Krongrad. I can say for a fact that I have learned something today that I'm going to use to brag to my friends.
There you go.
No,
Spread the word. Eat like a vulture.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Thank you so much. Now, Dr. Krongrad, why are people becoming metabolically unhealthy despite unprecedented abundance?
Well, abundance in and of itself it can be unhealthy, right? I mean, the dose is the poison. How much of stuff you're supposed to eat, right? At some point, you're supposed to stop eating, for example. You're not supposed to eat nonstop. Why are people metabolically unhealthy? Well, it's a lot of reasons. I mean, the food is one, the physical activity is another, the sleep patterns, the toxins, the artificial light, which is metabolically toxic if you handle it poorly. There are a lot of reasons.
Oh, wow. So it's basically just modern society, essentially.
If you want to boil it down to one bullet point, yeah. Mm-hmm. Modern society is bad for your health. Yep.
Well, don't you think people are going to be like, okay, really? Amidst the health advancements, the advancement in technology, the fact that life has gotten easier and you're trying to say that all these things are making us unhealthy. How would you respond to that?
Technology, when it comes to functional supremacy, technology isn't your friend. Technology is your enemy. For example, I'm sitting in a room now that has windows made of glass. That glass is a technological advancement. It didn't exist 100,000 years ago. That glass filters out near infrared light, which comes from the sun. It's part of the sunshine. That technology has filtered out something that has really important biological benefits. Okay, so now I've got technology, it's called glass. Well, it's actually bad for me. So the common assumption that technology is somehow good for you is, I think, potentially very dangerous. I run into this all the time. People come to me and say, oh, we've got artificial intelligence now. We're not going to need doctors. You know, we've got all this technology. Who needs doctors anymore? I'm like, okay, before I embrace AI, I tell them I'm still stuck on the old technologies. And if they're willing to listen, they'll ask me, so which technologies are you trying to work with? I said, well, I'm still trying to master the jump rope. That's my technology. If we're talking about health and fitness, I think a jump rope will do a lot more for you than AI. They don't want to hear it because that's going to take some effort, right? You actually got to pick up a rope and jump.
Wow. I
So
love that rebuttal so much. That rebuttal, it's going to shut anybody up.
I don't know about that. People are still going to keep talking.
Uh, so, Dr. Krongrad, I think if I were to, kind of elaborate on what you told me, I think the problem is may not necessarily be technology itself. It may have to do with how we've developed technology. We've kind of developed technology not to cater to our biology. It's almost as if we develop technology in a way that we think we're going to be immune to the, should I say, the detriments of it in a way. Take, for example, when scientists discovered radioactivity, they never actually sat down to think, what if the whatever these elements are emitting may be dangerous for us? Should we test that out? Should we conduct experiments to see? It just happened. Oh, wow. So this thing is not actually safe to be around. Accidentally, they just accidentally discovered that it's not safe to be around. And I'm actually surprised that even up until now, we are still behaving the same way when it comes to technology. When we develop a new scientific method or some kind of technological advancement, we do not take time to check if it caters to our biology. We just wait later to discover it's mistakenly, oh, this is not actually safe to be around. This is not safe to consume. For example, now major parts of the world now are contaminated with PFAS and some kind of metabolic some chemical substances that do not really cater to human biology. And I'm not necessarily an expert, or I don't know the names to call them, but I do understand that there are lots of chemical compounds in the sky, in our water supply that we are consuming. But because of the fact that it's in small quantities, scientists just assume it's not going to kill us, but it's just going to let us live long enough
I
and
don't
not
think
die.
anybody's making. I don't think anybody's making assumptions that it's not going to kill us. I think it's not even an afterthought. Okay, we technology isn't developed to make people healthier. Technology is developed to make money.
And that's just the painful thing. That's the
It's
painful
not
thing.
complicated. Health is not complicated. Let me give you another example that's closer to home for most people than radioactivity. Okay,
Yes.
seed oils, safflower oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil. Those are products of technological advancements. Right? They're not natural products. Natural fats, natural dietary fats are things like butter and lard, okay, and tallow and avocado fat. Okay, people weren't consuming safflower oil, um, sitting around the cave 100,000 years ago. It didn't exist. That technological advancement was initially used, at least on a mass scale, it was used to introduce a product based on cottonseed oil. It was in the United States. It was called Crisco. That innovation helped make Procter and Gamble. There were a couple of in-laws. Procter and Gamble helped make them very rich. It also helped to make people very sick. So there you've got a technological advancement. First cottonseed oil, then soybean oil, then canola oil, and all the rest of them. People consuming it in mass quantities, being told, don't eat eggs, don't eat butter because that's got cholesterol. Eat this stuff. Well, this stuff's garbage. It's really bad for you. And on the other hand, what nature designed, what we've always consumed, is incredibly good for you. So a perfect illustration of the fact that technology isn't has nothing to do with you, and it doesn't help improve your health. Look, let me be really as simple as I can be about this. If you want health and that's all you want, there's only three things you essentially need. You need food. So what about you, Blessed? Do you have food?
Oh, yes.
Okay. You need gravity. Is there gravity where you live?
Definitely.
Okay. So you can exercise. You can squat, you can
Yes.
lunge, you can do push-ups, you can go running, you can lift stuff. So you have food, you have gravity. Okay. Gravity's free. The food's going to cost a little bit, not that much, hopefully. And
Yeah.
the third one, do you have a pillow?
A pillow to sleep on.
Yeah. Do you have one?
I have two.
You have two. Okay. So you have food, gravity, and two pillows. You have everything you need to be healthy. That's all you need. Everything else, technology, AI, radioactivity, it's got nothing to do with you. It's not about your health. And people get confused because they're being given information designed to take the money out of your pocket.
Oh, wow. Dr. Krongrad, I must say you've opened my mind to a new perspective. Now,
Yeah,
I
but
am
you've
aware.
known this, right?
Yes, yes, I have, but I've never really given it some thoughts. I guess I just brush over it in my everyday life, but you've actually made me to start to, think about it. And I think I'm going to continue thinking about it from time to time now, honestly. I just hope and wish as as a race, we human beings can kind of like develop technology in a way that it caters to our biology. I'm thinking that we are
But wait,
getting
let me stop you there. We don't
okay.
need to. There's no need for that. Nature already designed what we need.
Oh, wow. So are you saying we shouldn't continue to develop ourselves technologically?
Well, if you're asking me, do we need technology in order to be healthy? My answer is no, we don't. We don't. Gravity, you have that. Nature already designed it. There's gravity. Great. You're done. You can do resistance training. You can do endurance training. Okay. If you
Yes.
have a place to sleep, nature designed that. You don't even need a pillow to sleep. Actually, all you need is gravity. If you want to sleep, just lie down and go to sleep. Align yourself with the sun and the moon. Okay. That part's easy. It's not complicated. The food, now it's gotten complicated because people have messed up our natural environment with monocrop culture and so on. But you're telling me I need technology in order to feed myself? The answer is no. The only technology I need is a cow.
Oh, wow. The cow itself is very, very complex. It's a very, very complex piece of technology, I can assure you.
But
I've seen
that's up
some
to
around.
you. But that's up to you. Do you want to see the cow as complex? Do you need to understand every molecule in the cow? Or do you want to see it as simple, meaning here's a cow, here's the milk, done? It's not complicated. It's not, you don't need to complicate it. You don't need technology. How many, I mean, you're in Africa, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are there societies in Africa today who live essentially on cows?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Oh,
lots of them.
okay. All right. Do they need technology in order to be fed? No.
Not at all. They herd
Right.
their cows.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
Exactly. So no, we don't need technology. We need to get away from technology if we want to be healthy.
Dr. Kanga, honestly, this is going to be a lot to take in, and I'm going to need some time, probably even years, to maybe process this because I am so heavily dependent on technology that if I cut it totally out of my life, oh my, I
Well,
don't even know what to say.
okay, but ask yourself, what are your goals, right? So the question we're asking, and by we I mean the members of ES, okay, that's easy. It's pronounced ES. The members of
Yes,
ES are asking one question, and that question isn't how do I communicate from Nigeria to the United States, and which technology do I need? Obviously, you need technology for that sort of thing, and that's what we're doing now, okay, by internet. That's not the question we're
yes.
asking. We're asking, what do I need to preserve physical, cognitive, and emotional function? That's all we're asking. And to preserve
Oh, no.
physical, cognitive, and emotional function, I need what nature designed for me. I don't need technology for those things.
Oh, I get it now. Sorry, I was looking at it from a general perspective,
No.
but when it comes to those aspects you just mentioned,
Mm-mm.
yes, definitely different. I even do it unconsciously. I don't consume some kind of food. I exercise regularly. Currently, I am 6 feet tall. I weigh about 80 kilograms, and I would say that's a healthy stature for a young person at the age of 26. I exercise regularly, upper body, lower body. I actually look quite fit, and I can move a lot of weight. So I would say I'm already ticking some of the boxes. Then emotionally, I try to meditate. I make sure I get good sleep. I follow the circadian rhythm. Although I don't fully understand it yet, but I do try to follow it as much as I can.
Okay.
When it
So
gets
now,
dark, I go to sleep.
so now
Yes.
you're talking about some of the nuances. The reason as exists is because there is a fascinating infinite world around the bend. So we are there to explore it and understand it and bring in the subtleties and the nuances, partly because the world has become unnecessarily very complicated by technology and industry and corruption, all the things we talked about, but also because we like learning. It's that simple. And so, what you said, you're going to need years to process. I've been at this 60 years and I feel like I understand virtually nothing. I reduce all of this overwhelming amount of information into three actionable bullet points because I need to act too. I can't wait to know everything before I make a decision. And that's why I say things like food, gravity, and pillow. Okay, just to help you, stay focused on the things that will help you make progress. But now the question becomes, okay, what's food? Which food? I mean, they introduced all this other stuff. I don't have access to, um, fresh cow milk outside my door. I don't have it. Is it okay to have the milk that they put in the supermarket? What about the eggs? What did they feed the chickens? How does that affect the fatty acid composition? There are subtleties in all of this. We've come together as a community because we like to learn. We like each other's company. We're a great bunch of people. And the science and the stories and the politics are endlessly fascinating. There's all kinds of characters that creep into it that keep us entertained. Plus, now we're also adding adventures. Like we're going on an expedition into the desert in a few months to help reinforce some of these lessons. So, look, you can make it as simple as you want. I've given you the secret to life: food, gravity, pillow. There, you're done. You're done. You don't have to think about anything else. But if you want more nuance and subtlety, that's what we're there for.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Krongrad. Now, Dr. Krongrad, I want to quickly talk about is Um, it as yes. How can people join this movement? How can people be a part of is? And I noticed that ACE emerged during the pandemic as a place for independent thought and resilience. So I believe there are lots of people because I would consider myself an independent thinker and somebody who wants to be resilient. So how can people join the ACE movement or the ACE community or group or society, if you will?
So, ES actually started before the pandemic, and we did wind up talking about depression and immunity and all that stuff during the pandemic. To join ES, um, we've got a WhatsApp group that you're welcome to join at the moment. You can add yourself. I can add you. There's no cost to joining it. I am building new services um, to help accommodate the growing demand for the kinds of material that we generate. You can learn about those on the website. It's not final, but it's in transition. We'll be ready soon. That website is worldofez.com. World, WORLDOFEZZ, worldofez.com.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Krangat. Now, Dr. Krangat, before I wrap up by asking my final question, I want to say a very big thank you for coming on my podcast, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come on my podcast to share your perspective, your insights, your wisdom, and most of all, your precious time. It's really been a pleasure to have you. And also thank you for giving my listeners, a way to reach you once they've, finished listening to this recording. Now, to my final question for today before we close. What has medicine, your experience with nutrition, and basically being in the health space for so long taught you about mortality?
Um, the lessons I've had about mortality come from my profession, but also from my personal life. I've lost people who were close to me. What has it taught me?
Yes.
That it ends for all of us. We all have a finite lifespan, which kind of sharpens the question: the time that you do have on this earth, what is it for? Do you want to spend your time answering emails and looking at spreadsheets? Maybe that's not my answer, but maybe it's the right answer for you. So death comes. The real question to me is, how are you going to live?
Oh, wow. You've left us with a question for us to ponder on. Given this is thought at last, I believe my listeners or the audience, after listening to this recording, are definitely going to ponder on that thought for quite some time. Now, for everyone listening, this was a conversation about medicine, nutrition, aging, resilience, movement, circadian biology, freedom, discipline, human performance, and the lifelong pursuit of vitality and wisdom. It's been a pleasure to have Dr. Arnon Krongrad on the Thoughts at Last podcast. He has shared some very unique perspective, some very, very esoteric kind of knowledge. And it's been a pleasure to have him. Now, if this conversation, sits with you, it connected with you, and you really love what happened, please share it with a friend or a loved one or someone who you think needs to listen to this. And also do subscribe and, turn on post notification. Once again, Dr. Kranga, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for coming here and, speaking with us, sharing your knowledge, sharing your insight, and most of all, sharing your precious time with us. I really deeply appreciate it. And on
It's
that
been
note,
my
I want to
pleasure.
say, yes, and on that note, I want to say, do have a wonderful day and do take care of yourself.
Thank you, Blessed. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Bye bye.